program. Dave Saunders is on vacation. Leanne Pillow will be filling in for him, and she'll give you everything you need to know going on in Richmond this week, and that coming up here on Richmond's Morning News. Oh, by the way, Super Dave, yesterday, big meeting. Big meeting.
That's why I wasn't invited.
Yes. So we're working on something. Now, I think we're going to be able to make a big announcement coming up on Monday. I can't give any details other than on Monday, I think we get to go live with something that is very near and dear to my heart, something that I've got a passion for and that Jeff has a passion for, and that's our military and our first responders. So we're putting the final details on something that we're gonna have a big announcement here on WRVA that we're going to support our first responders and our military in the most meaningful way that I could think of. So I'm just telling you, on Monday, you need to make sure you tune into the program. Really big announcement here on WRVA. We're going to take on a pretty big project to try to support our military and our first responders. We'll tell you about it on Monday. That's all I can say, Dave. I'm in the cone of silence. Can't say anything else.
Can't even give a hint.
Cone of silence. Can't say anything else.
Well, I guess I just have to wait then.
You have to wait like everybody else. But Monday, WRVA is going to step up in a big way to support and show our support for the military and our first responders, something that Jeff Katz and I both feel very strongly about. All right, it is 6:36 this morning on Richmond's Morning News, News Radio WRVA. I did want to touch on a couple things here on the program. So last night, the strikes against Iran were not as much as they were the night before that. Why is that important? Because I think the president is still giving J.D. Vance's team, Kushner and Witkoff, an opportunity to continue to talk with Iran. They are having, quote-unquote, technical talks today about the MOU. A couple things in doing some research and looking into things. Number one, what does that mean? That means they're still giving an opportunity for someone to crack in Iran to say, fine, we have to be able to have a talk with you, and we can't beat you, we can't destroy you militarily, we can affect you economically, and we're getting to you morale-wise, but you're just overwhelming us with bombs and planes and things that we can't stop. They're giving people an opportunity to talk at least. Now, are there any hardliners that are going to give in? I don't know. Are there any people that I call them dead enders that are just going to be there till the very bitter end and they're not interested in anything else? And if they have to become a martyr, so be it. There's a lot of that over there. Is there anybody that's going to be pragmatic and want to make a deal? That's yet to be seen. Now, a couple things. The Israeli intelligence service discovered that there was a new assassination plot against the president of the United States, Donald Trump. That's one of the reasons why there's speculation that instead of flying out of Turkey on the new Air Force One, he went back to the older Air Force Ones because they are the safest plane in the world. It doesn't surprise anybody. A lot of people are outraged. I mean, if the United States took out the Ayatollah and we're in a shooting war with them, the Iranians are certainly not going to just stand there and not be a threat back to the United States. And I think that's a big shock for a lot of people that just kind of feel like, well, the U.S. can do whatever they want. Nobody can do anything back to us. They will plot. They will try every bit that they can. The United States has a formidable military, but don't think that people aren't going to want to fight back at us. And that's the part where when we have those war power resolution talks, this is a shooting war. These people are fighting, and they are trying to put us in harm's way. They're shooting at our bases in Bahrain and the UAE. They do mean to do us harm. That's why we're shooting back and forth to each other. It's very naive to think that that's not what's going on. Now, I will tell you, I did a little bit of research. The United States, when we started these back, people talked about, well, Iran could sit back for the last 2 months during the ceasefire, rebuild, restock, reload, and we're just giving them time to get ready to fight again. Yeah, that might be true, but that also gave our military planners and our suppliers and our troops an opportunity to rest, recalibrate, and retarget. And boy, it turns out the retargeting they did in this was huge. Now, we talk about the Strait of Hormuz and the Iranian ports, and you hear a lot about Karg Island. What we don't hear is the rail spur that you have in northern Iran, which is almost as important as what you have for the ports in Karg Island in Iran. That's what was hit and destroyed. There's a railway that they were using to get just some of their oil out by rail to India and Russia. Well, that rail spur has been destroyed, and trying to get oil out of there now is going to be next to impossible. They also took out some key parts of the infrastructure of the oil port facilities they had, not Karg Island itself, but some right next to it that supported Karg Island, and that will decimate their ability to try to offload their oil. Even if they get to pump the oil back out, even if they got to trade the oil in the open market, which they can't anymore, their facilities are severely damaged after these 2 days of attacks. Again, yes, absolutely, they had a chance to recalibrate, rest, and rearm, but so did the United States, and the targeting people, the planners at the Pentagon, picked some different targets and completely obliterated those rail lines in the northern part of the country, which is going to severely affect their ability to get oil out of that country and onto the open market. That's going to hurt them a lot. Now, yesterday in the program, if you were listening, it was an interesting conversation. We had on a retired lieutenant colonel from the Heritage Foundation. I said, 20% of the oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. He goes, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. That's what everybody in the media wants to say. It's a lot less than that. So I did the research. So I wanted to pass this along for you. Just see, again, if you listen to this radio show, you're informed, you know more than most. And if you listen to us every day, you're on top of things. And if you don't, well, you're going to be asking questions like, well, how much oil does go through the Strait of Hormuz? What is going on over there? You listen to the show, you're ahead of the rest. If you don't, well, you're playing catch up the rest of the day. So here's what I found out. Before the conflict, the Strait of Hormuz was the most important oil shipping choke point in the world. 20 million barrels of crude oil and petroleum products moved through the strait every day. That's roughly 1/5 of the daily global oil supply and about a quarter of all the oil transported by sea. Most of that was going to Asia, China, India, Japan, South Korea, while Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they use pipelines that bypass the strait. Those alternative routes can only handle a fraction of the normal volume. Then the war started, and the near shutdown to tanker traffic. And again, I used a bunch of different sources to come up with this. During the outbreak of fighting on the 28 ships stopped basically going through the strait because of the military attacks. The big thing were the insurance concerns and the danger to crews and the vessels. Now, this is according to the International Energy Agency. Oil flows through the strait fell from about 20 million barrels a day to an average of just 2.7 million barrels a day during March, April, and May. Again, 20 million were going through a day. Then, when all this went on during March, April, and May, it really choked it off to 2.7 million barrels going through a day. That means the Strait of Hormuz went from carrying close to 20% of the world's oil to carrying only 2 to 3% of the world's oil. That's why you saw everything shoot up. The consequences were immediate. Gulf producers couldn't simply keep pumping oil all day if they had nowhere to ship it and nowhere left to store it. Production was cut, refineries slowed down, supplies of diesel, jet fuel, and liquefied petroleum gas were also disrupted. Oil prices surged, right? Remember all this. Bent crude came close to $120 a barrel in March, while other international benchmarks hit $144 in April. And that's when we saw the spike in our gas prices. We more than doubled to the pre-war levels. Then the rest of the world responded, but it didn't replace what was going through the strait with production alone. The United States, Brazil, Kazakhstan, and Venezuela all increased exports. Remember, I told you, Venezuela, with Maduro gone, now is able to trade their oil on the open market. They've helped pick up the pace for what was missing through the Strait of Hormuz. Who else jumped in? Saudi Arabia sent more crude through its pipeline to the Red Sea, and the UAE used its pipeline bypassing Hormuz. The International Energy Agency, if you remember this, also released 400 million barrels from emergency reserves at one point. Those releases were adding about 2.5 barrels a day to the market. Consumers also backed off because, honestly, we talked about this here on the program. I stopped filling my gas tank up. I only went half. I only went 3/4. We stopped buying as much gasoline, which brought the demand back. The demand back down when it comes to oil. So the alternative routes, the increased production from other countries, the self uh, people stopped using as much gasoline, really kind of brought back the price of oil. But the Strait of Hormuz was not reopened back up to its 20% mark. So I just wanted to pass that along because it was kind of confusing when we had the guest yesterday. Today, Brent crude $76 a barrel, up 5% for the week, as traders once again worry about a prolonged disruption of the Gulf. So the bottom line is
30 seconds.
the world found a way to soften the Strait of Hormuz shock, but never found a permanent replacement for the strait. When the Strait of Hormuz closes, oil prices rise. When traffic resumes, prices fall. So we'll see what happens now with renewed fighting inside the Strait of Hormuz and around Iran. I wanted to bring you that this morning just to let you know when we were talking to the expert we had on yesterday, made that statement and wanted to make sure I followed up and everybody understood that, yes, 20% used to flow through. Now it's 3%. Other people have moved things around, but certainly with the Strait of Hormuz choked off, it does cause a fluctuation in oil prices. All right, coming up, I'll read the best text messages of the morning, and we'll remind you we have a big announcement coming up on Monday, how News Radio WRVA, Rich and Jeff are going to step up to support our first responders and our military folks. All right, today's program brought to you in part by our friends at Men's Wellness Center.